Hi, my name's Doug Miller. I'm an attorney and gift planner at Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri. Thanks for joining this webinar entitled 23 Reasons to Make a Will. Almost every week I have a conversation with someone who tells me, I know I need to make a will, I just haven't done it yet. Well, there's a lot of reasons people give for not making wills. Maybe they're just too busy. Maybe it sounds too complicated. Maybe they think it's too expensive, too depressing to think about dying. I understand all of that. What I hope in this webinar is just to give you some information to hopefully prompt you and encourage you to go ahead and complete this task you know you need to do. Hopefully I'll give you 23 reasons why you should make a will. Before we get started, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. Lord, you have blessed us in many ways. Help us to be wise in using those blessings so that we can bless other people. Father, help us just today. I pray you'll help me be clear and easy to understand so that we can know more about your plan for the possessions you've entrusted to us. Father, I thank you for these people who are listening so that they can become better stewards and make wise decisions and use the property so that it can be a blessing to other people. Lord, we just thank you so much for the blessing of your son, Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen. Well, we're going to go through 23 reasons why you need to make a will. The first one's pretty obvious. You have possessions. I listed several different types of possessions. Vehicles, that includes everything with a certificate title from car titles, boats, motors, trailers, RVs, even mobile homes have certificates of titles. You also may have bank accounts, including checking, savings, certificates of deposit, money markets, any type of account in a bank. That's some of your possessions. You may have investments, like you may own stock in corporations. You may have a retirement account, like an IRA, a 401k, or a 403b. A lot of wealth is tied up into retirement accounts nowadays. That's certainly a substantial asset of yours. And of course, there's life insurance, a contract that says, I'll make payments on premiums and you'll pay this other person when I die. And also you may own some real estate. You may have a house, you may own farmland or business property. Maybe you have some rental houses. All these would be considered your possessions. And finally, what I call stuff, just the thing in your house, jewelry, furniture, clothing, tools, equipment. Could be grain in the barn, or it could be any number of things, livestock. It doesn't really have a title, but it is considered your possessions. So the legal word you've probably heard for all this type of property is your estate. Your estate is simply all the property that you own, but passes when you die. So when you hear us talk about estate planning, when we talk about your estate, we're talking about everything that you own, everything that's going to transfer when you pass away. So that's the first reason you should make a will, is you have stuff. The second reason you should think about making a will is because someday you will die. I'm sure you probably figured out this is one of the 23 reasons you need to make a will. You have possessions, and someday you're going to die. Therefore, you need a will. Well, we all know that unless the Lord returns first, all of us will die eventually. We're not meant to live forever on this earth. So you need to make a plan for your possessions while you're still able, while you're alive, while you're still competent. Failing to plan now will just result in extra time, stress, and expense for your loved ones later. So again, there's two reasons are well enough just to make a will, but we have some other ones to look at as well. I want to take just a few moments to look at some reasons from Scripture why you should make a will. The third reason is because God owns everything. Psalm 24:1 tells us, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. We know that as the Creator, God owns everything. Since he is the owner, that means that we're just in possession of his property while we're alive. We understand that when we die, we're going to give up those possessions. So there's a difference between being the owner of property and being the one in possession. I like to think, for example, of when you rent a car. You'll go to the rental car place, sign a bunch of papers, they'll throw you the keys and let you drive off. But make no mistake, they own the car. You're just merely in possession of it. If you sell the car, give the car away, wreck the car, you're going to be accountable to the ultimate owner. So again, while you're in possession of it, you understand that you're going to have to return it to the owner someday. So again, that's an important mindset for us to have when we say our property, our house, our accounts. Really, what we should be would be more scriptural to say those that are in our possession. The fourth reason to make a will is because people are more important than possession. We can get caught up into what goes, but we can read in Luke chapter 15 in Luke, 3 parables. The first parable is about the lost sheep. Imagine a man has 100 sheep and one of them wanders off. He'll leave the 99 behind and search for that one who's lost. And when he finds that sheep, he brings it back and to join the flock, and there's much joy and celebration. The second parable is a woman has 10 coins. If she misplaced one, she'll turn the house upside down. She'll sweep every corner, and she'll keep looking until she finds that coin. And when she finds it, she'll rejoice. But finally, the third parable in Luke 15 is the lost son, or the prodigal son. We're all familiar with that story, where the younger son takes his inheritance to a faraway country, squanders it, and before too long is serving pig slop. And he finally comes to his senses. I like that phrase, comes to his senses, and says, my dad's servants back home are treated better than I am. I'm going to go back home and tell my father I'm not entitled to be a son anymore, but please make me a servant. And you know what happens? As he's coming back home, the father runs out to meet him. Now, on the face of it, these are parables about shepherding and about coin collecting and about parenting, but really what these reveal is God's concern, God's heart for those that are lost, for people who don't know Jesus, for people that have sinned and fallen away. So people are more important than possession to God. We need to keep that in mind as we make our own plans to remember that what's important to him, which leads us to the next point. The fifth reason we should make a will is because our motivation is love. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter, tells us, if I give all I possess to the poor, if I surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. In other words, we could give it all away. We could die as a martyr, but really, if we're not motivated by love, it's worthless, pointless. I think we all can understand that we do our giving out of love. We give to our family and friends because we love them. We give to our church because we love our church. We love the body of believers that are there and the outreach they have to our community. And we're grateful for the teaching we get each week. We also give to missionaries that are being effective, taking the word to the four corners of the earth, and ministries that are accomplishing the Great Commission. So we give because we see that the good that they're doing, and we have love for those people on the other side of the world or that are reached by these ministries that don't know the Lord. So that should be our primary motivation when we are estate planning above all else. The next reason why we should make a will is because we need to provide for our dependents. 1 Timothy 5:8 tells us, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially his immediate family, he is denied the faith and worse than an unbeliever. Well, I don't want to be worse than an unbeliever. So taking care of those people that are dependent on us is important to God. So that begs the question, who are our dependents? Well, certainly your spouse and your minor children are dependent on you. But what about your adult children? Are they financially dependent on you? Perhaps, but probably not. They're probably self-supporting and would make it without your help. How about churches, your church and other ministries that you support? Are they dependent on you? Are they dependent on your regular giving? I think they would miss your giving if you weren't there, if you didn't make it. So I think I can make an argument that a church or a ministry is one of our dependents because they rely on our support and prayers each month. So it's, again, important for us to consider who are our dependents that we should provide for. The next reason you should make a will is because we're going to be accountable to the owner. In Matthew chapter 25, we read the parable of the talents. We're all familiar with a master that gives 3 of his servants some talents and then leaves on a trip. When he comes back, he finds the first 2 have taken what was given and caused an increase, doubled his money in essence. Here's what the master says: "Well done, good and faithful servants. You've been faithful with few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Certainly what we want to hear when we face our maker someday. But unfortunately, the third servant buried the talent that was given and just simply returned what was given with no increase. And the master was very critical and said, take his talent and give it to the others and cast him out. So again, the question I ask is, do you think the owner of our possessions, God, cares about what happens to his property? I think it's fair to say that he does. I feel like he's very concerned about it. We think about this while we're alive, that we're good stewards, but we don't always give a lot of thought to our stewardship after we're gone, after we're done with it, when we die. Do you think God stops caring about his property when we die? I don't either. So we will be accountable. It's not pleasant to think about being accountable for what we've been given, but I do believe it's a biblical principle. The 8th reason why you should make a will is because you already have an estate plan. If I'm given a seminar in person, I sometimes ask, is there anyone that doesn't have an estate plan? And a few hands go up and they admit that no, they've not done anything. Well, I tell them, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is you do have an estate plan, whether you know it or not. The bad news is your state legislature for you. Now, if you die without a will, your possessions are going to be distributed according to the law in your state. Not as bad as it sounds. Most of the state laws assume that you would want it to go to your family members. So it's not a bad plan. But how much do you think your state plan will give to your church, ministries, or missionaries that you support? You said none. You're correct. So if you want to be a good steward and use the possessions that God's entrusted to you, you can't rely on state law to do that. You need to take action. You shouldn't rely on the state law to distribute God's property. The 9th reason you should make a will I want to offer is that you get to choose who receives your possessions. Well, that's kind of obvious. That's the whole point of the will, is that we decide what happens to our property. Do you want it to go to all to your spouse or some to your children? Are you going to include a gift to your church, ministries, or missionaries? Most people would say to my spouse, if not to my spouse, to my kids, and stop there. But I want to challenge you. Again, this is some churches and ministries and missions are dependent on your support and while you're alive. Why not include them in your estate plan when you're gone? So I'll make this question and pose this question to you. If you could minimize taxes and expenses by doing some planning now, would you consider leaving a gift in your will to your church or ministry? See, money that would, if you don't do any planning, that'll go to expenses and taxes, could be redirected and used for the Lord's work. I think that's good stewardship. I think that's something that would be pleasing to God, is that we've taken money and freed up and avoided some expenses and some taxes and are able to use it in a more effective way for the kingdom work. So you get to decide. That's the primary purpose of making a will. Reason number 10, you also get to decide how much to give or how to give. You can make your will very specific, or you can make it very general. You can put in the will a specific amount to a specific person. For example, $10,000 to your church. Is $10,000 a lot of money? Well, it is, and yet it kind of depends, doesn't it? If your total estate is $12,000, $10,000 is a whole lot. But what if your estate is $10 million? Is $10,000 very much? Not so much. That's why I prefer a percentage over a dollar amount in a specific gift. For example, 10% to Ozark Christian College. So whether I have $10 or $10 million, 10% is going to be there, that proportion is going to carry. And I'm able to say that I've given a tithe, and I've been able to make that adjustable depending on how much my estate is worth. None of us know what our estate's going to be worth when we die. So this way it would be a percentage instead of a specific amount. You can also make your gift in your will contingent or conditional. For example, my vehicle to my sister, if she survives me. If your sister's still living when you die, she gets the vehicle. If not, this gift lapses. So you can put some conditions on your will provisions if you choose to do that. And again, it'll go if that person isn't survived or that condition's not met, it'll just be ignored and go on to the next. As I said, most people, when they make their wills, they'll just say, all else to my children equally. And I understand that you want to treat your children equally and you don't want one to feel like they're favored over the other. But I, again, challenge you, maybe you want to include a gift to your church or to a ministry that you support. I've heard some people that include their church or a ministry as one of the children. For example, if they have 3 children, they include 1/4 to each of the 3 children and 1/4 to the ministry or to the church. Obviously, that would be treating them like a dependent and including a gift as proportionate to what they're giving to their children. The next reason to make a will is because you get to select who will serve as your executor. Now, your executor is the person who takes charge of your possessions, pays the bills, and then distributes what's left to your beneficiaries being those people you want it to ultimately go to. We need to have someone that's in charge or takes control over property and make sure bills get paid first, and then what's left to be distributed. In most states, we don't use we use the neutral term personal representative nowadays instead of the executor or the executrix or the administrator or the administratrix. So we just use the neutral term of personal representative, but it's the same role. So you get to decide who would you want to serve as your executor. Often someone says, well, I'll just be the oldest child. Or maybe I'm going to leave it to this person because they're a beneficiary. They're going to end up with the money anyway, so I'm going to let them be the executor. There's another option, and that's a trust department at a bank. They are professionals that will manage your money, and they will make sure that the bills get paid and the taxes are filed and property gets to the right person. Of course, they charge a fee for that, but it is an option. Someone once shared this with me, a basic qualification to be an executor: can they balance a checkbook? Well, not everyone can, and not everyone does balance a checkbook, but it's important that you keep accurate records if you're serving as an executor. You want to be able to account for every penny that you received and every penny that you paid out, so that when the other beneficiaries or the creditors come and say, where's my share? You'll be able to say, this amount came in, these expenses were deducted, and here's your portion that you're entitled to. Be an open book, and that removes the suspicions, and that removes any wondering if you're getting your fair share. So again, that's the kind of person you want to serve as your executor, someone who's going to be fair and keep good, accurate records. The 12th reason I'll give you to make a will is that you get to nominate guardians for your minor children. When I say minor children, in most states, that's defined as a child who is under the age of 18. In other words, a person becomes considered legally an adult in most states the day they turn 18. So, as we know, a court needs to appoint a guardian for minor children who need someone to care for them, whose parents either have died or can't provide care for them. That's, again, a minor guardianship. So in your will, you get to decide who would you want to take care of your minor child, or maybe you have a special needs child that's older than 18 that still needs a guardian. Who would you want to serve in that role if you were unable to do it yourself? Well, obviously, you want to pick someone who's able and willing. So for that reason, I encourage people to ask the person that they have in mind if they would be willing to serve in that role. If they would not, and they refuse to, then you've not really taken care of this responsibility. So you want to find someone who's willing and able. Also, you'll want someone who shares your values and your priorities. You'll want them raised in a Christian home, involved in a church and a youth group and having positive role models and mentors. So again, that's very important. It may make more sense to appoint guardians as someone who's raising their own children. And so sometimes I see people that they've asked a couple in their church or a couple of close friends who have children their age, and they agree to be guardians for each other's children if something happens to one. Obviously there's other family members and relatives, but you get to decide who you want to raise your child and be responsible for their care. So this is a very important and a very good reason for someone to make a will if they have minor children who you'll have raise them. Reason 13 you should make a will is you also get to determine when the children receive their inheritance. Without a will, children receive their entire inheritance the day they turn 18 years of age, on their 18th birthday. So that should give us a little pause. You're probably more responsible and mature than I was when I was 18, but I shudder to think what I would have done with thousands of dollars on my 18th birthday. I'm sure it would involve a new car and a fancy trip somewhere, but I wouldn't have a lot to show for it in a few months later. So in your will, you can change that. You can say, wait just a minute, I want them to wait until they're a little older, a little wiser, understand the value of a dollar, understand the value of hard work. And so I'm going to say, hold their inheritance until they're older, say age 21 or 25, 30, 35, whatever age you want. In the meantime, that money that you've set aside for each child can be used to pay for their expenses. For example, maybe they need braces. Maybe they need tuition for their college. Maybe they need some help paying the rent. Maybe you're going to want them to buy a good, solid used car instead of a brand new sports car. So that money can be used for the children, and then what's left will be given to them when they reach that age. The next decision is that you get to make in a will is you can decide who will be holding their inheritance for the children. Well, in my case, when our children were young, we said that we want the guardians that we've appointed to also hold the money for the kids. We figure we trust them with our kids, we trust them with the money. They're going to need the money to take care of our kids. Other people appoint someone else, perhaps the person that's serving as the executor, perhaps a trusted family member, and they think that there's some advantage to a check and balance between those who are raising the children and those who have managed the money, which I understand that. On the other hand, it's also a potential for a conflict between what the people who are raising the children think they need and the people that are holding and managing the money. Again, this might be a good opportunity to consider a trust department. I might encourage, you know your situation, but you could appoint a guardian or a family member to serve. And then, at some point, I want to imagine that you have an 18-year-old who realizes there's $100,000 waiting on him or her, and he asks you every day for some of that money, and you get a little wearisome of that, constantly begging for his inheritance to come earlier instead of waiting until he's 25. So that might wear you down. So it might be good to have the trust department as a backup, that you can resign, and then that would turn it over to the trust department. And again, they would make sure the money is dispersed according to your plan. 15th reason I'll give for making a will is that you can coordinate beneficiary designations. And perhaps the best way to explain this is through an example. Let's imagine a lady makes a will, a single lady makes a will and says that I want my property to go to my 5 children equally when I die. Okay? And then meanwhile, she puts her daughter who lives down the street from her on her bank account just in case she needs to have her pay a bill when she's gone on vacation or in the hospital. So my question is, when that woman dies, when the mother dies, who receives the money in the bank account? Does it go under the will to the 5 children, or does it go to the daughter that's on the account? The answer is, it goes to the daughter that's on the account. Why doesn't it go under the will? Because a will only distributes property that's titled in your name only when you die. So let that sink in a minute. A will doesn't trump the other designations that you've made on the property itself. So let's look at some different types of titling property. The way property is titled depends on what determines what happens to it when you die. So property that may have a beneficiary designation will not be distributed under your will. So for example, it's that joint bank account with the mother and her daughter that had survivorship went to the surviving daughter and not under the will. And again, a common joint owner with survivorship account would be something that's titled in husband and wife name. In most states, property that's as husband and wife will go to the surviving spouse. We're also familiar with life insurance. So if life insurance says I've got designated beneficiaries, I've put perhaps my spouse as my primary and my children as my secondary. So that's what's going to happen to the life insurance money. It's not going to go under the will. If I say under the will, the life insurance goes to A, but I've put XYZ as my beneficiaries, the company's going to give it to XYZ who you told them to. In a similar fashion, retirement accounts can have beneficiary designations as well. So typically when you set up an IRA or 401k, they're going to ask you, to whom do you want to leave this when you die? And again, you primarily would put your spouse and then your children or some other organization. So that's what's going to happen to those funds, unless for some reason those beneficiaries aren't living, then they don't know who to do, then it would go under the will, but not until then. If the beneficiaries are there to take, what's going to happen to your retirement accounts. And that leaves me with the last one I want to talk about is transfer on death titling. So this is something relatively recent in law, which is about the past 30 years ago. In some states and on some types of property, you're able to title it your name, transfer on death to someone else. So I could title my vehicle, Doug, transfer on death to Joe. While I'm alive, I'm 100% owner of that property, and Joe has no interest, no ownership whatsoever. But when I die, that property is transferred automatically by virtue of this law to Joe, and all he would have to do is show my death certificate, and the Department of Motor Vehicles would say, all right, Joe, that's your car. So you see, that type of titling has a beneficiary designation, would not go under the will. So again, how your property's titled determines what happens to it. And property that's in your name only is what goes under your will, not property that has joint ownership or a beneficiary designation or TOD. Okay, so it's important to consider that and to get a grasp of that when you're making your will. I still think you absolutely need to will, because there may be some property in your name only. Okay, so it's again just an opportunity to realize, hey, if I want my life insurance, if I want this bank account to go to all 5 children, maybe I should put it transfer on death to the 5 children instead of just the daughter down the street. Doesn't give them access to it. They don't get to write checks on it, but it transfers ownership on the day I die if I haven't changed it. Okay. The 16th reason I'll give you for making a will is that it might minimize disputes. Without a will, people might disagree on who's going to receive what possession, who gets the house, who gets the car. Yes, it's going to be distributed by state law, but it doesn't specify who gets what. So there could be some back and forth on who should get this type of property or that piece of land, all those types of things. Also, there could be a disagreement on who gets to serve as executor, who gets to serve as the guardian. So in your will, you can be very specific and describe who gets what and who serves as executor, who you want to serve as guardian. One thing you can add into your will is a no contest clause, which simply says if someone contests or tries to break it, they don't receive anything. Well, that discourages family fights. That discourages someone from filing suit because they risk losing everything. So that may be something to consider. Again, it's an opportunity to do some planning. The less wiggle room, the less room for interpretation, the more clear it's going to be. It's going to give guidance for what happens to your property. There won't be room for dispute. Next, I want to make it the point that homemade wills can be problematic. Homemade wills, by that I mean, you get a piece of paper and you just write down what you want to happen. Often they're ambiguous, meaning that they could be subject to different interpretations. It could read this way, maybe that way. Sometimes they are not as complete or as this can close the loop back around to what happens if A happens, then B happens. If B happens, how does this all work together? So again, there's more opportunity for disputes, but more importantly, many homemade wills don't meet the formal requirements for a will. You know, your age, you have to have it in writing, you have to sign it, it has to be witnessed. So, you know, the number of witnesses differs from state to state. Most states it's 2, some states it's 3. So that's where a lot of wills that are written on a napkin fail, is they didn't have the requisite number of witnesses. So again, there can be problematic is a kind way to put it. So I want to just stop and ask the question. We're talking about your life savings, everything that you own. And we're talking about your loved ones and the causes you care about. Do you really want to risk messing up your life savings and failing to provide for those that you care about just by trying to do it yourself? Probably not the place to cut corners. So you'll want to get help to do that. The next reason you should go ahead and make a will is it can always be updated. Your will doesn't take effect until you die, so you can always revise it if your circumstances change. I encourage people to get their will out. If it's been a few years, dust it off and read it. And if it still says what you want, great. Put it back in the file cabinet. If it doesn't, then you can make changes. It's something you can change up until the day you die. Usually there's not changes in the law so much. It's been pretty static. It's a matter of your life situation. Maybe you've had more children. Maybe there's been more grandchildren. Maybe someone has died and no longer is, you know, they've already passed away and they're not going to be there to receive. Maybe there's been marriages or divorces, things like this. Maybe you've changed churches. Maybe you no longer go to the church you did when you made your will 20 years ago. You've moved across the country and you go to a new church and you want to include that church. Now you're supporting ministries that have changed or ministries that have gone out of service. So again, it's good to look at them. The last thing I put on there is family dynamic. You know your family situation better than anyone. And if there's any tension, if there's any disagreement, if there's any friction between family members, it may not be a good idea to put one of those in control of the property over the others, or that you just see that there's tension there. I would go so far as to say, if there's a little tension now, there'll probably be a lot of tension later once you're gone. So again, maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe you need to make some changes just because of the family dynamics in your particular situation. That may be cause to change. It's like, these two aren't getting along. I'm not going to put them in that role where they have to serve together. So again, you know your situation best. You have an opportunity to update it. The 19th reason you should make a will is because it can provide peace of mind. We all know that making a will is something we need to do and we should do and we've put off doing. So actually doing it can provide a peace of mind that we've been talking about and give you a sense of relief and accomplishment and satisfaction. I often, when people sign their wills, they often remark, it's like, oh, I'm glad to get this over with. That wasn't so hard. That wasn't so complicated. That wasn't so painful. I don't know why I put it off. Well, again, I want to encourage you. If you go through and complete your will, you'll be glad you did. Your planning now will mean less stress, less expense, less time and trouble for your loved ones. And obviously, if there's less expenses, that means more. There's going to be more going to your family and the causes you care about. It's true. Let's just acknowledge it. It's easy to put off making your will. Getting started is the hardest part. But why put it off any longer? It's time to take action. I encourage you to talk to your attorney about estate planning options. We're talking about wills today. There's many other different types of plans available, and we can talk about different ways of titling and different ways of different vehicles for making the gift to accomplish what you want. You know, really what should be primary is what you want, and then how we get there is secondary, and that's again what the attorney can help you with. So please talk to your attorney about options that might be right for you. And reason number 20 why you should make a will is because it's easier, quicker, cheaper than ever. Ozark offers a free online service that allows you to prepare a state-specific, legally binding will in about 30 minutes. We're all familiar with online wills, that there are companies out there that are selling those. Well, through a partnership with a company called GiftWise, Ozark is able to offer these online wills for free. All you do is log in, answer a few simple questions, print it, and then sign it in front of witnesses and a notary public, and you're done. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to you. You'll be asked if you want to make a gift to Ozark, but you're not required to use this service at all. So it's confidential. It's something you can do at your own pace. I encourage you to go to our website, occ.edu/legacy, and look for the button Create Your Free Online Will and check it out. You'll also have an opportunity to create a power of attorney, which takes effect if you ever become incapacitated and can't take care of yourself. So please check this out. It's service to you, a way for us to encourage you to make some plans and to get this important task checked off your list. The next reason I want to talk about for making a will is it could reduce your taxes. Now, certain types of property are subject to taxes. And when I say appreciated property, I'm talking about property that's increased in value. Let's say you bought some property for $1,000 and now it's worth $10,000. If you sell it during your lifetime, that's considered taxable capital gain. But if you leave it in your will to your family or to a ministry, there'll be no tax. It'll be at today's value, not when you acquired it value. It's called the step-up basis. If you give any appreciated property to a charity, whether at your during your lifetime or at your passing, it will be transferred tax-free. So the reason why is if you sell the land, you're going to pay taxes, and if you give that to your church, it's after taxes. But if you gave that land to your church, if you gave that to a ministry, they could sell it, and the tax rate for churches and charities is 0, and so there'd be no tax due. So again, with some planning, when you stop and think about your will and what you want to happen to your property, it's a good opportunity to do some tax planning. Now, we're familiar with a traditional IRA. A traditional IRA, you take money, you get to take money out of your taxable income and put it in a special account, and it grows tax-free. When is it taxed? When you take it out. That's why the IRS requires you to take a required minimum distribution when you turn age 72. It's so the IRS can get a piece of their tax dollar. However, while you're alive, you can tell the IRS, don't give the required minimum distribution to me, give it to my church, give it to Ozark, give it to a ministry, and that will count as your RMD and will not be taxable income to you. So there's a way to use your IRA. Once you're 70 and a half, you can make a gift directly from your IRA to a ministry or to a charity. Also, at your passing, you have an opportunity to make it, make the college, make a charity, make your church as one of your beneficiaries. So my wife and I have written our wills and trusts years ago, and we're leaving a certain percentage to ministries that we support, like Ozark Christian College. We've changed it. We've now decided to make that gift out of our retirement accounts instead of out of our will. Why? Because that way we naming the college, naming the other ministries as a beneficiary of our retirement account, a certain percentage to a charity or to a ministry will be tax-free. Well, and the rest of it will leave the property to our children or to our other family and friends, the non-tax assets. So again, my point is here, giving taxable property to your church or ministry can reduce or eliminate taxes due. And I'll say that while you're alive, and certainly at your passing, it can reduce taxes. You need to talk to your financial planner and your tax advisor about the very best gifts for charitable giving. Again and again, I hear people say, I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know I could save taxes and make this gift to my charity, and this can count as my tithe to my church. Now that the standard deduction has gone up, a lot of people are giving from their IRAs or from appreciated stock or appreciated property instead of itemizing. So again, this is still something that'll benefit you even if you don't itemize anymore. Reason 22 is that you have an opportunity in your will to do something eternally significant. You have an opportunity to do planning, and I'm going to go so far as to say a responsibility to distribute your possessions to support the Lord's work. As we've mentioned, when you're gone, your church is going to miss the check that you put in the plate. You have an opportunity in your will to perhaps replace that. What do I mean? Let's say you give $5,000 a year to your church. One option would be for you to leave $100,000 to your church and a certificate deposit that's earning 5% that would replace the $5,000 that you were giving in perpetuity. In your estate plan, you have an opportunity to support ministries to continue well after you're gone. Those that you care about, those that you know are effective and that are doing good work, you have an opportunity to see that work continues year into the future. So you can be making a difference, positive difference, years to come. Maybe you can fund a special project at your church or at a ministry. Maybe you can start a whole new ministry. It's an opportunity to dream big. We think of wills, we think about dying, but your will is more about life. What was important to you? What do you want to see continued even when you're no longer here? I say your last gift can be your best gift. I'm thinking of a lady who lived month to month on a Social Security check, but when she died, she left her humble house to the church. The house was sold, and to give you an idea, it was $30,000. But that was the largest gift. She would have been amazed if she would have known that she could have made a gift that big and that large to her church so that they could hire another youth minister to reach kids in the community, or get a van to help people come to church events, or give to missions. So again, your last gift, when you're done with it, can be your best gift and your biggest gift and make a maximum impact. And finally, reason 23 why you should make your will is it's an opportunity to join the Ozark Legacy Society. In last year, Ozark Christian College turned 80 years old. And during those 80 years that Ozark's been in existence, many people have left gifts in their wills to Ozark. Those gifts have allowed Ozark to offer more scholarships to students preparing for a lifetime of ministry, start new degree programs, and to renovate its campus. And those are ones that I can think of just from this past year. Unfortunately, many of these gifts were a surprise to us. We didn't know that we were in the person's will. So we've created the Ozark Legacy Society to thank and recognize those individuals who include a gift to Ozark in their estate plans. This gives us an opportunity to thank them in person, and they can feel good about their gifts being used for the purpose they intended. We offer some benefits to members of the Ozark Legacy Society, special events, special luncheons and events that we have, discounts in the bookstore. You name in the Ambassador magazine, I notice I've put here optional. A lot of people don't want the glory for themselves or the recognition, but I want to encourage you that if they see your name on that list of people who are leaving a gift to Ozark, it could be an encouragement to someone else to do the same. If Doug can do that, I can do that. So again, please consider joining the Ozark Legacy Society. Let us know. All you need to do is just let us know that you've included Ozark in your estate plan. Again, visit occ.edu/legacy, and there you can find the application form for the Ozark Legacy Society. And while you're there, you can download a free estate planning guide to help you as you prepare to make your plans. Well, that's it. 23 reasons to make a will. Hopefully, I've given you a lot of things to think about. I want to be a resource. So if you have any questions or if I can help you in any way, my contact information is here. Again, check out our Legacy website. You'll find a lot of resources and the link to the free online will service and a estate planning guide. Thanks for joining me and have a good day.